The topic of tonight's core volunteer training is Grasstops engagement and the endorsement program. I'm Todd Elvins. I'm the CCL action coordinator, and I'm also the program coordinator for the endorsement program. So our goals for tonight are for you all to understand CCL's endorsement program by the end of this webinar and how to get started using the program. By the end of the webinar, you should also be able to locate and navigate the outreach database, and you should know everything that you need to know to coordinate with your chapter or an action team to pursue Grasstops support for our policy and climate action. So here's the agenda. We'll start off by going over the 5 levers of political will and how Grasstops outreach fits into the 5 levers of political will. You're probably already familiar with the 5 levers if you've been on some number of these CVT webinars. We'll start off by talking a little bit about the opportunity. Why are we doing Grasstops outreach and why is it important? We'll go over the endorser program and the outreach database at a high level, and there are a lot more details on community. If you decide that this is something that you'd like to work on, I'd encourage you to get on community and go through some of the more detailed training exercises. There, for example, there's endorsements 101, endorsements 201, and so on. Number 4 on the agenda, how are we doing? How many endorsements have we secured so far and of what kinds? Number 5, we'll talk about how you can get started using the endorsement program. Go out and contact community leaders in your vicinity and secure endorsements from them. And then number 6, at the very end, we'll have a partner exercise. We'll go into breakout rooms and you can actually get started with your very first endorsement. So here's a little bit about the opportunity. In addition to Citizens Climate Lobby, the lobby work that we've done on the Hill for the last 9 years, we've heard from the Congressional Management Foundation, which is the organization in DC that knows more about how Congress works than any other organization on the planet. And they've told us that Grasstops constituents undeniably can influence congressional decisions. And the statistics show that 84% of congressional offices that they polled said that 25 or fewer emails from Grasstops leaders, those are community leaders, will influence a member of Congress decision on a policy. And the polling also showed that 55% agreed that it takes fewer than 10 Grasstops constituents to influence a member of Congress. So that's a little bit about the opportunity, and we know that ourselves from the lobbying work that we've done, and we've heard from members of Congress ourselves, and we'll talk a little bit more about one particular volunteer. So let's talk just a minute about the 5 levers of political will. You're probably all familiar with this already. The 5 levers of political will are chapter development, lobbying, media, grassroots outreach, and Grasstops endorsements. And of course, Grasstops endorsements is the lever where we go out into the community and we talk to community leaders and editorial boards and CEOs of companies and leaders of organizations and the president of the Chamber of Commerce and locally elected officials and folks like that. And we ask them to endorse either climate action or our specific carbon fee and dividend legislative proposal. And we use those endorsements to show members of Congress that there is strong support in the district for that member of Congress to come out in favor of climate action or carbon fee and dividend. So that's the very high level goal. That's how Grasstops outreach fits into Citizens Climate Lobby and the 5 levers of political will, because as you know, everything that volunteers do in Citizens Climate Lobby is focused on building support for carbon fee and dividend and climate action in the US Congress. So let's talk a little bit more about the opportunity. I might have mentioned earlier in this webinar that there are a few different kinds of endorsements. One powerful type of an endorsement is a municipal resolution, and these most often come from city councils. For example, Santa Fe, New Mexico, Salt Lake City, those city councils have gotten together. They've probably been approached by CCL volunteers and said, okay, city council, we would like you to look at this resolution, this draft resolution, consider passing this, voting on this in a city council meeting. Those municipal resolutions are usually of the form, Dear United States Congress, we, the City Council of Santa Fe, New Mexico, encourage you, the U.S. Congress, to take action on climate, specifically to enact a carbon fee and dividend bill. Those municipal resolutions could also come from a county board of supervisors and other organizations, local political and non-political organizations. Another powerful kind of an endorsement is a newspaper editorial. This is similar in that volunteers, CCL volunteers, have probably approached the editorial board, had meetings with editorial boards, gotten them up to speed on what is carbon fee and dividend, why is it important to take action on climate. We're up to about 90 of these editorial boards endorsements across the country. We love it when editorial boards write articles, write editorials in their newspapers. And of course, if the editors are up to speed on carbon fee and dividend, it's of course a better opportunity for us to write op-eds and have more LTEs published. So I alluded earlier in the call to a superstar volunteer. This is Jay Butera. He lives in Pennsylvania, and he, about 4 or 5 years ago, was looking around at the most impactful thing that he could do. And he saw that Florida was ground zero for climate change. So he went to Florida for weeks and weeks at a time. And he talked to members of Congress, he talked to community leaders. And what he heard from members of Congress is, you know, if you want me to take a position on something, I need to hear from the community leaders, from the Grasstops leaders in my district that they think it's important. So Jay went out into the community and he enlisted dozens of chamber presidents and mayors in districts in Florida, and he had them sign leader letters, and we'll talk more about leader letters. A leader letter is, you know, dear member of Congress, I, the community leader, the president of the Chamber of Commerce, feel strongly that you should do X, you know, act on climate or support carbon fee and dividend. And not only did Jay have those community leaders signed letters, he also brought them to the congressional offices, the district offices. And this, you know, this quote on the right is just so powerful. When I walked into Congressman Curbelo's office with 3 Chamber of Commerce presidents and 3 mayors, it totally changed the conversation. So this is just an example of how powerful it is to get community leaders on board and have them lobby alongside of us. All right, let's talk a little bit about the endorsement program and the outreach database. And these are initiatives that were spawned directly by the work that Jay Butera did in Florida. These are all modeled on the amazing work that Jay did. So I've mentioned chapters and action teams, but you know, how does the endorsement program work with chapters and action teams? Well, the endorsement program is all about identifying and engaging community leaders, building long-term relationships with those community leaders. And you know, that's really engaging with those community leaders, not only to sign a piece of paper that we can deliver to a congressional office during a lobby meeting, but really we want to engage with those community leaders and have a long-term relationship where we can ask them to do more. We can ask them to come with us to a lobby meeting like Jay did in Florida. We can ask them to write an op-ed or issue a press release from their company saying that they had signed a leader letter. They could also ask their colleagues to endorse carbon fee and dividend. The community leaders could also come with us to editorial board meetings. So there's lots of things these community leaders could do, and that CCL chapters and the Grasstops action teams within chapters and action teams can do in the community. All right, let's do some definitions. So I've used this term Grasstops leaders quite a bit. You know, the specific definition of a Grasstop leader is an influential organization or individual. It could be a big company like Nabisco, or it could be the laundromat down the street. Just looking to see how we're doing on time. We've talked about endorsements. Endorsements are any evidence that a Grasstops leader supports action on climate change. A delegate is a CCL volunteer who has adopted a Grasstops leader. And the CCL volunteer may not know the Grasstops leader, but the delegate, the CCL volunteer might say, I'm gonna go get an endorsement from the CEO of Nabisco. And then that volunteer, becomes the delegate to the CEO of Nabisco. That volunteer acts as the primary point of contact. The volunteer researches the endorser, determines the most effective action to secure that endorsements, keeps the outreach database up to date. The outreach database is a contact management system and a repository for the endorsements that are secured. And I'll just say right here that it's very important that delegates, as soon as they make that decision to pursue a particular Grasstops leader, that delegate, that CCL volunteer, needs to go to the outreach database and check to see if somebody's already working on that community leader, because we don't want to have redundancies and we don't want to have collisions. We don't want the CEO of Nabisco to get requests from 3 different volunteers, because that makes us look unorganized. And so that's why we have a contact management system to avoid those kind of collisions and conflicts. So we talked about this. These are a couple of the things that we do in the endorsements program. So let's look at those in a little bit more detail. You all know what a CCL chapter is, but you may not be familiar with action teams. If you get to community, get onto community, you'll see that there are about 40 action teams, and I'll show a list of them in just a minute. But an action team is a group of CCL volunteers who could be geographically dispersed across the country for many different chapters, who have a common passion or a common interest. So for examples, we've got the agricultural action team, business climate leaders, Team Oil. And the reason that I'm talking about these is because some of these action teams are focused on are completely focused on going out and getting endorsements. Other action teams are it's one of the things they do. Business climate leaders is the best example. They spend all of their time and energy out focused on getting endorsements. Team Oil, it's one of the things that they do. They go out and work on getting endorsements from oil companies and refineries and other oil-related companies. So if you have an interest or a passion, you might want to look at the list of action teams on community and find one that looks like a good fit for you, a good match. Get engaged with that action team. If that action team is focused on endorsements, you can do that. If that action team is focused on something else, then that might be the most impactful thing that you can do as a CCL volunteer. All right, so let's just look quickly to see how to find the action team. So if you've not been on community or you don't know how to find the action teams, step number 1, get logged into community. Step number 2, click the connect menu option at the top of the screen. Step number 2 is to click action teams directory. And this is new. If you haven't been on a while, this has changed recently. But when you click the action teams directory, you'll see this big list. You'll see the list on the right with about 40 different action teams, and they're divided into categories. And as I said, some of these are focused on going out and getting endorsements, and some of them are focused on other things. So find the one that's the best match for your interests. So how can you, after this webinar is over, if you're interested in getting more engaged in the endorsement program, what should you do? Where do you go to find resources? How do you get started? So the best thing to do is to get logged into community and click the first menu option at the top of the screen, which is take action. And once you do that, you'll see a long list of things on the left-hand side. And you'll have to scroll down about halfway down, and you'll see an option called community outreach. And there's a lot of specialized resources there. Just underneath community outreach, you'll see some other options. You'll see something called Seek Endorsements. That's another great place to look for resources. Seek Endorsements is the place that you're going to want to look at to find the outreach database. Under community outreach, if you click community outreach, you'll see that a number of the action teams, about 10 of the action teams, have started posting some really specialized materials and just things that are specific to that action team. And often these are best practices and documents, and sometimes they're slides and sometimes they're videos, but this is just a wealth of information and a great place to look to get started on doing endorsements. All right, let's talk about soliciting endorsements. You've decided that you want to work on going out and getting endorsements. What kinds of things are you going to work on? So we've talked about editorials. This is where you go and you meet with an editorial board, and often you'll go with a few volunteers to meet with the editorial board. You'll need an appointment to do that, and it takes a while to get to know these editorial boards, and you probably won't make a ton of progress in your first meeting. It'll take a series of meetings. You'll need to build a relationship. Another kind of an endorsement is a leader's letter, and I mentioned this briefly earlier, but a leader's letter is just a one-page letter. Most often it's just a one-page letter, and we have blank letters, so you don't have to write these from scratch. And these typically come in two flavors. There's one that says, please, dear US Congress, take action on climate. And the other one says, dear US Congress, enact carbon fee and dividend. So of course, community leaders aren't going to be familiar with the carbon fee and dividend until you get to know them and you get them up to speed and do some education. So what we found is community leaders are more, it's an easier ask to get them to sign, please take action on climate, but it's more impactful on the member of Congress to get them to sign the dear US Congress, enact carbon fee and dividend. So I'll show you pictures of those leader letters in just a minute. We talked about resolutions. Those are often city council. Municipal resolution could be a county board of supervisors. We've also done some work in scouring the web to find public positions, because there's a lot of companies that have posted on their public website what their position is on climate change, and we call those public positions, and our admin team puts those in the database. So these are the two leader letters that I was talking about. The first, the one on the left, is take action on climate. The one on the right is enact carbon fee and dividend. And you can grab these off of community and print them and bring them with you and ask people to sign them. You don't expect to get this signed in the very first meeting. It will often take a few meetings and some education to get community leaders up to the educated to the point where they're ready to sign a letter like this. So that's all about relationship building. So there's three different ways that you can ask a community leader to sign one of these leader letters. The first one is hard copy. That's the one I was just talking about, where you just print it out and bring it with you. And I do a lot of presentations, and I'll always have a few of these with me. And I can sometimes get the host who invited me to come to the presentation to sign these on the spot, because after I've given a presentation, they have a much better understanding of what it is that I'm asking them to sign. Not always the case. It's always good to bring volunteers with you to presentations also, because the volunteers can greet community leaders on the way in the door and the way out the door, and follow up with people, exchange business cards. Okay, option number 2, electronic personal invitation. This is what happens when you go into the endorsement database and you say, I'm going to work to get an endorsement from the CEO of Nabisco. And then once you've met with the CEO of Nabisco and you feel that the CEO of Nabisco, Laura Smith, is ready to sign an endorsement letter, you can go back to the outreach database and click a button that says send Laura Smith an email with a link to an endorsement. And this is really a handy way for a busy CEO to sign an endorsement. They get an email, they click the link, they fill in a couple of blanks, and they're done. It goes back into the database. The delegate is notified that the endorsement is done. This is a terrific way to do it. It requires a little bit of coordination and relationship building, of course, that we talked about. And of course, the third way is we have an online form. You can send community leaders to the website, and the link is down below at the very bottom, citizensclimatelobby.org/leaders, and they can sign a leader's letter online. The disadvantage here is that the delegate is not notified when this is submitted. And so the delegate, if they wanted to, could send an email to our admin and say, hey, let me know when the endorsement comes in from the CEO of Nabisco, for example. So we have signed, we have secured to about 2,000 signed endorsements of various kinds, including the leader letters, municipal resolutions, editorial boards. We've collected those onto flyers. You can download these flyers from community and take them out and show them people. These are great handouts at tabling events, for example. This is also great ammunition if you're trying to secure a resolution from the CEO of Nabisco. You know, bring these with you and say, look, you're not the first one we're asking to sign. We've been doing this for a while, and we have endorsements from lots of other folks. We've also created a terrific collection of what we call sector reports. And so if you were going to go to meet with the CEO of Nabisco, a good thing for you to bring with you is the businesses and associations sector report, because you can show that CEO of Nabisco and say, here's a list of the businesses that have already signed endorsements. So you can show them that they're not the first. If you're going to meet a priest in a Catholic church, you can put a sector report, a list of all the other faith-based leaders who have signed endorsements of various kinds. So these sector reports are terrific ammunition to bring with you when you're going to meetings with potential signers of endorsements. Maybe the most important kind of report are the district and state reports, because these are the ones that liaisons and other CCL volunteers are going to bring with them when they go to lobby meetings. So for example, I live in California District 49. So if I was going to a lobby meeting, and I had not already brought a list of endorsements from the district, and these are endorsements just from District 49, for example. This is actually New York. I should have said New York. So this is, if I was going to a lobby meeting in New York, I would bring this district report. If I'm meeting with a senator from New York, I would bring a state report, and that would be a list of all of the endorsements that are signed for the state in the state. And these reports are all ready to go. You can go to community, there's folders full of these reports, and they're ready to use. This is a public CCL website. If you go to the public CCL website, the link is down at the bottom, citizensclimatelobby.org/endorsements. You'll see that we have lists of all of the editorial endorsements and the municipal resolutions. And this is a great place to send people who say, well, tell me about the progress that you've made. And this is good public information. Some of the endorsements are private, where the endorser, the community leader, has said that it's fine, you know, they're happy to sign an endorsement, but they'd prefer to it not be advertised except to members of Congress. And those are called private endorsements. This is the outreach database, and there's a lot going on here. And so you're going to need to get in here and click around a little bit to get familiar with it. There are now videos embedded in here. So if you kind of want a little 2 or 3 minute video to explain how to use something, you can click it's called a help video. So as I said earlier, the very first thing you're going to want to do if you decide, I'm going to go get an endorsement from the CEO of Nabisco or the president of the local chamber of commerce, you want to go here before you do anything else. Go here and type in that person's name or their title or their company and make sure that there's no other CCL volunteer working on that target endorser. Because we don't want collisions and we don't want confusion. We don't want multiple requests coming in. So once you've, uh-oh, do I have a question?
Yeah, this is Joseph Sherrill from the Barrett Valley chapter. I have 26 endorsements to date. I've been locked out of this database. They keep asking me for my username and password, and I type it in, the one for CCL, and it doesn't let me in. And I asked to change my password, and it won't let me change my password. How do I get into this? Why isn't this more user-friendly?
Yeah, hi, Joseph. Yeah, I'm not going to be able to help you with that until the end of the call because I've got 25 other people who are here to learn about the endorsement system. But I'd be happy to help get you in and help figure out what the problem is. And thank you for all the amazing endorsement work that you've done over the years. So for those of you who've never seen the user interface for the endorser, the first time you look at it, it does look a little bit complicated, but after you've used it a couple of times, it's like any piece of software, you get used to it. So as I said, the first thing you do, look to see if your target is already in here. If they're not, put them in and become the delegate for that target endorser. And then every time you meet with that Grasstops leader, that community leader, go back to the outreach database and put in an update. Put in the notes. It's kind of like going to a lobby meeting. You go back and you say, we had a meeting on this date, and here's what they said, and here's what I said, and here's the next steps, and we're making progress, and keep it up to date. So let's talk just for a minute. I've already said a little bit about this. How many endorsements do we have? These numbers are a little bit old. We're up to 2,000 leaders letters signed and in the outreach database. Once you do secure a leaders letter and it's signed, you can scan it and update it into the database, and that is a completed endorsement. And of course, don't stop there. Go out to that Grasstops leader and invite them to do other things. Invite them to come with you to a lobby meeting. Invite them to come to an editorial board meeting. Don't stop once the piece of paper is signed. We have a lot of municipal resolutions and editorial, newspaper editorial endorsements, and over 1,300 public position endorsements. So I've talked about some of this already. How do you get to the outreach database? So go to community and click take action. It's the first menu at the top. And then in the left-hand side, you're going to have to scroll down. And we saw this in an earlier slide. Scroll down past about halfway down, and you'll see one of the options is seek endorsements. And when you click seek endorsements, you'll see that there are a bunch of tabs, and there's a lot of information here to help you get started. What do you do if you get stuck? What's the next step? Where can I get training? Where do I find resources? How do I find blank letters? So there's the learn, prepare, plan, do it, share it. Here's some definitions, endorsement reports. Those are the sector reports and district reports I was talking about earlier. And when you're ready to go to the database, click this gray button here, and that'll take you to the outreach database user interface that I showed a couple of slides ago. And there's an action team for endorsements also. It's called the Endorser Delegate Action Team. And the way to get there is to hit the connect button on community, and you'll see that one of the menu options is endorser delegates, and that's an action team just like all the other action teams where you can join and you can post and you can talk about things and have access to resources. There's about 300 members of that action team. That's a great place to go to have a community of people, of delegates who are all talking about endorsements. We also have a monthly phone call. It's always on the Tuesday after the Saturday call at 5 p.m. Pacific, and the last 3 months I've had a guest speaker. So what do you do if you get stuck, you have questions, you need help? Joseph is having trouble getting logged in. One thing you can do is to send an email to endorse@citizensclimate.org, and there are a staff of CCL volunteers who are monitoring that email, and they will get back to you within a day or two and do their best to help you with whatever problem you're having or whatever question you might have. So I just wanted to say a couple of words. I've hinted at this during the call, but we once a Grasstops leader has signed an endorsement letter, that's not the end. We really want to encourage volunteers to continue that engagement, to invite that Grasstops leader to come to a lobby meeting, issue a press release, come to an editorial board meeting, reach out to their colleagues. Signing and uploading a signed and scanned letter to the database is terrific, and that will definitely help us to move Congress. But continue that relationship and see what else, see where that relationship leads, and how else that community leader can be engaged in the endorsement program. And the reason that we're going to do this is because setting specific and measurable short-term and stretch goals is a great thing to do right away. So you've just heard all this information about the endorsement program, and if you start using it right away, that'll help to solidify that information. Being in a meeting room with somebody else, you'll see that you have a support system. You don't want to go out and do this by yourself. You want to work with other volunteers and celebrate our accomplishments together. So the 5 things that I'd like to ask you to do in the breakout rooms is to work with one other person. One of you go to the outreach database, or both of you go to the outreach database. Click the tab for advanced search and filter on your chapter. So you'll see that all the chapters are listed at the top of one of the columns. And so select your chapter, and you'll see that all of the endorsements and endorsements in progress will be listed. And then see if there, see if any entries come up. There might be some public statements, there might be municipal resolution, there could be some in progress. So take a look at those and talk about those, brainstorm other folks, other community leaders that you might like to add to the outreach database and become the delegate. And then go ahead and put them in the database and make a plan for reaching out to them and making a connection. And my email is here, todd@citizensclimate.org, and Brett's email is brett@citizensclimate.org. All right.